We're doing Fire and Fate, A Tale of the Lord of Darkness by Serena Valentino. Prologue. From the Book of Fairy Tales, Hades. The gossamer strings of fate are intricately entangled in the fabric of the Book of Fairy Tales, woven together like a spider's web. And at its center is Hades, the keeper of the dead in his realm, who has the power to command the stars and direct destinies, much like us, the Odd Sisters, authors of this book of fairy tales. And while we are all connected by death, our bond with Hades is forged by something far more powerful, fate. Before Hades took his throne in the underworld, he was happy in his role. He was the giver of wealth, god of hidden treasure, gold, and all that lies beneath the earth, including the dead. But even so, he wasn't sinister, or the demon he became. He was passive and the keeper of balance. He wasn't always evil. That was an attribute he acquired with time, loneliness, and despair after many years in his unhappy kingdom. Hades wanted nothing more than to escape the misery of his new life, but he took his responsibilities seriously. He was loath to leave his throne unattended, and therefore felt trapped in perpetual doom and anguish. Until one day fate intervened in the guise of three witches, Lucinda, Ruby, and Martha. If you haven't gathered by now that the stories you have been reading are chapters from the Book of Fairy Tales, then you haven't been paying attention. And though we have established that time is nothing more than a human construct, that all timelines move concurrently rather than separately, you are about to learn why. When the gods were defeated, namely the Titan Cronus, time was forever fractured. Ever since, we witches have not experienced time in a straight line. Sometimes we lose our thread and release the stories from our book of fairy tales out of sequence. But there is a method to our madness. What is time to the likes of witches and gods, beings who have the power to create or break worlds, and to direct the cosmos? The only thing we can't control, it would seem, is our own fates. Chapter 1. From the Book of Fairy Tales, Brothers of War. When we read about myths and legends, it is easy to forget that they are not just histories, but lived experiences and events that shaped the lives of those involved. We forget that powerful beings, even gods, have their struggles and heartbreaks, and we forget these are not just stories. The events in this tale took place during a time that is hard for mortals to fathom, when behemoth titans ruled with fire and chaos until they were eventually overthrown by their sons and daughters, the mighty and powerful Olympians. The reign of the Titans had become so rife with pandemonium and destruction. Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon decided it was time to overthrow their father Cronus and the other Titans and become the new ruling pantheon of gods. This battle would later be named the War of the Titans, a 10-year war pitting Olympians against Titans, new gods against old, children against fathers. A war marked by such heroism, it found its way into the pages of our book of fairy tales. So epic, its reverberations were felt throughout the realms, including the many kingdoms. A war that helped shape Hades into the god he is today. Hades was a major figure in this battle, and he and his brothers knew if they were going to overthrow the Titans, they would need the greatest of armies to defeat them. Titans were not mere giants, they were eaters of worlds, and larger than any mountain. The brothers knew they had to call upon every power at their disposal if they were to rule in the Titans' stead, and that is what they did. Poseidon called upon the sea, summoning great waves that carried all manner of creatures into the fray. Giant squids, monstrous octopuses, and even the great leviathans joined the fight. The creatures wrapped their strong tentacles around the Titans, holding them in place as they were enveloped by violently crashing waves. On those waves sailed moldering and decaying ships filled with armies of the dead, reanimated by Hades' power. Seas of skeletons stood on these ships, on every mountaintop, on every field, and astride Zeus's fleet of giant eagles. Zeus hurled his thunderbolts from above, commanding the sky to bring down torrential rains and winds more powerful than the strongest of hurricanes. If the Titans threw mountains at Hades' army, he would simply raise them again, sending the poor souls to their doom again and again. A death swarm enveloped the Titans as they fought off foes from every direction. For 10 years, the brothers fought together as one, side by side, until finally the Titans were defeated and locked away. On the final day of the battle against the Titans, a decision was made that would shape all of their fates, and indeed the fate of the worlds. Hades could see it was already in the making the moment the war ended. Hades spied his brothers among the ruins of their war. Wrecked ships littered the landscape. Buildings were crumbled, pillars were cracked, temples were submerged in water, and he wondered what Zeus and Poseidon were discussing. Even though Hades was the eldest son of the Titan Cronus, Zeus always took the lead, and Hades could feel Zeus was already deciding how things would go now that their father Cronus was locked away like the other Titans. Hades dismounted his giant three-headed dog, Cerberus, and looked at his brothers with a sly glint in his eyes. He could see what was happening. It was written on their faces, just as it was written by fate. "Of course you shall rule the sea, my brother," Zeus said, patting Poseidon on the back, "and Hades here shall rule the underworld." Zeus's smile was broad, flashing his large white teeth. "And I suppose you will rule the sky and everything that comes with it, including Olympus?" asked Hades, feeling himself become hot with anger. Cerberus narrowed his eyes and growled at Zeus. "Why, did you have something else in mind, Hades?" asked Zeus, scratching one of Cerberus's heads under the chin and giving each head a tasty severed tentacle. "I'm the eldest, Zeus. It should be me. And stop trying to butter up my dog." "Let's not forget, if it weren't for me, you'd still be living in the belly of our father, Hades. Our sisters and brother haven't forgotten." "Yes, yes, we all know you're the only one father didn't eat, and you made him—" "Regurgitate you," said Zeus, laughing. "And you were the last, Hades, so in a way you're the youngest." "I was expelled last because I was the firstborn, and I was Dad's favorite." All of this was true, of course, but that didn't matter to Zeus. Hades knew he shouldn't have been surprised this was happening. From the moment Zeus freed his siblings from the depths of their father's stomach, he acted as if he were the eldest son, with all the privileges that came along with it. "Just because I masterfully commanded the dead doesn't mean I want to live with them. I should have to stay where I reside for eternity," said Hades, feeling the heat of his anger rising within him. He had never felt that way before, the stifling heat, the burning, as if he were being consumed by fire, until finally his body exploded into flames, scorching everything around him. Zeus simply smirked and shook his head. "That settles it then. It's clear we're all suited to our roles. I shall rule the sky, Poseidon the sea, and Hades the underworld. Unless there are any objections, Hades? You're welcome, of course, to release the Titans and see if you're still Dad's favorite. We could have another 10-year war." What is 10 years to a god? But the truth was, Hades didn't want to fight his brother, at least not then. So he agreed to rule the underworld for the sake of peace and for family. How bad could it be? And this was how Hades was made the lord of the underworld. But that was not the end of Hades' story. It was only the beginning.